Invitation, ladies.
Creator, we thank you for the sage that our brother James gave to us for the purpose of honoring the sacred. And we thank you, Creator, for being together today, for the love that we have for each other, and for the family, passing on the traditions and wisdom of the elders to the younger generation. Koyana, Creator, for Joseph and his family. And thank you, Creator, for helping us to learn from each other.
My name is Joe Senungetuk, and I'm an artist and writer from Nome and Wales, and also I am here with my wife, Martha, who is also an artist, and together we act as the Alaska Pacific University's Elder Artists in Residence. With my work, I'm only doing it because I love doing it. Mm-hmm. I have my heart in it, and that's how I grew up in Nome with the parents that I had. They taught me important teachings of who I was. They left me with a sense of identity. With my artwork, I feel like I'm born with that kind of story. I thought that Welsh people were probably the last to cross that land bridge. And they did it so recently that they just stayed there. They liked the area that they landed in, and called themselves Inupiaq, people of the high mountain. So actually the Inupiaq name of Wales is called Kinigin. Both sets of my parents were orphaned by the influenza epidemic that happened in 1918 when my parents were small. And they didn't grow up with any of their parents. I don't know exactly who my kinfolks are beyond them, right. Beyond the Wales people that I grew up with. So I know that Sophie and her family were like the mentors of my father when he was ready to learn how to hunt and fish, like he's done all of his life. They hunted for anything from seals and walruses to belugas and other types of sea mammals that were available in Nome in that area. The younger times in Nome, in the elementary schools, I was always asked by the teachers from that point on to have me draw portraits of Abraham Lincoln or George Washington or other famous people from illustrations from books. And I would do that because I was considered by then a classroom artist. What it is simply the concentric rings after a seal pokes its head up and slowly goes down, and all it leaves behind is concentric circles. Huh. And that's the kind of abstract art that the Inupiaq forefathers did. Simple as that idea. But actually my thoughts about what Inupiaq art is, it comes from old museum illustrations. Most of my ideas comes from pre-contact days. With my artwork, I try to show people that we are an ancient peoples, and we go back thousands of years. When I was taking up drawing at the University of Alaska at Fairbanks, where I went for my first 2 years of college. My first mentor back then was Danny Pierce, and he was an old school printmaker, and he gave me the instructions of my first woodcuts. I liked the idea of carving material away to make sculptures. With the Kachina dolls crossing the Bering Strait, I was thinking about the early native people, which included our I have to call them like cousins. The Navajo people, when I heard about that group, I felt a really close kinship with all the Native Americans of the United States. When I found the material for this first one that I've done along the series of the Kachina dolls, I looked around in the backyard and I found a piece of pipe, and I thought if I cut it a certain way, it'll become like the body of this figure that I'm working on. And I collected various pieces of it, and it has a nose, a long nose, because that's what I found around the backyard. It was an old inner tube for a bicycle. Oh. And the top part is the typing element from
I see that.
From the IBM selection.
That's so cool.
That I used when I was working as a writer at San Francisco. And so for the history of this first piece that I told myself, I'll find all of the free objects around me that are laying around in the backyard. It's because of the natural native habit of keeping everything.
Yes.
On old Inupiaq art, they usually show a X-ray vision of the sea mammals that they hunted. And that's where I've seen artifacts that came from the Seward Peninsula area. And what we did as keepers of the food that we ate, I guess what we were trying to show was that we were experts at whatever sea mammals were hunted. And I include the X-ray vision because of that. I think most artists at one part of their career or something, they would like to see a self-portrait. I think most all important artists have done that. And I didn't do it for promoting myself. I never do that. To me, in my way of thinking, I included that article that in the Tundra Times as an example of what people were doing to our homelands up in the North Slope area. And because they had the oil companies, they would take over. They would control all those lands one way or another. We felt them coming, even in a small, remote Seward Peninsula Inupiaq village. When the Second World War came, we knew that there were authorities back in Washington, D.C. who could affect our lives. And they would tell us, during the war, we have to put curtains on our windows so the enemy won't be able to fly over and see where our villages were. I can learn from two cultures. One is kind of waning and the language getting lost, and I've seen all of that in my lifetime. I've seen the culture losing a lot of stuff, and I enjoyed the practice of writing about all that. I did write a book when I was living as an art student at San Francisco. I got my degree at San Francisco Art Institute. When I wrote Give or Take a Century, I remember the stories I put in this book of people who lived in that day and age. I remember it as if it were yesterday. And when it leaves an impact like that, I save it somewhere in my mind. I don't know how that works, but I know it's almost like magic, that we can go back to an early stage in our lives and we can practically relive it. As far as getting to know artists and artistry, it takes a mountain of work. Whenever I look at my work and I consider it nearly done. I add a few more details, and then I forget about it. It might as well have been thrown away because I regret the idea of copying your own work because it sells. And that's something that I gave up on years ago. I'm done with whatever assignment that I enjoyed doing back then. This is not boasting, but when I see my own work, my mind will say, whoa, a genius did that. With those surprises, I know that it was a job well done. I work very slowly, and I slowly build up an idea as to what the end product might look like. But some of the pieces just simply are ideas along the way that I'll either incorporate into the finished piece or throw them out. People have asked me, would you like to reproduce some of your artwork and make money at it? I say, no. No, I'm not interested in that. I'm interested in the process, and then when I'm done with it, it's done. I'm not a tourist art producer. Our spirit is within us, and it speaks way louder than money-making processes. I leave the wealth to whomever might grab at it. But the idea of leaving a legacy is another part that shows me that people can have great ideas. They can make them alive on their own. So that's what I concentrate on. And that's what I like doing. Even though it might be as a poor person, I don't mind that. In fact, the wealth that I do have is in friendships, relationships, and the idea of passing on to the younger group. You know, that's happening today. I have grandchildren, and some of them are busy at working creatively, and that's great. That's so wonderful. But I take my ideas from around the world as I see it. The idea of attracting good practices in native art are always back to the ideas of doing original works by creative people who will learn how to invent new ways to within their artist materials, such as ivory or stone. And that's what I'm always in search of, to see talent really just emerging, growing, until it gets so big it takes over your life. Anyway, that's how it goes for me.
Wow. Okay, time for that one song.
Okay. This project is supported in part by the National Endowment for the Arts on the web at arts.gov.